Is Square Enix finally pulling a Capcom? Well, it sure looks that way. I'm not gonna lie. The possibility of playing Rebirth on my Switch Pro while I'm on the train going to work sounds amazing. That is assuming, of course, though, that Square actually does what it needs to do, and this is not all just to keep the investors happy, and then nothing really changes. I will say, though, recently that new CEO, Takashi Kido, really seems to be making the right move, so I'm really hoping that he continues this going forward. From going full multi-platform to even investing in new IPs, and not to mention that 6% increase that they saw in the stock a few weeks ago, at least in Japan, this might be the beginning of a brand new Square. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we started seeing things like them really pushing into the West a lot more, kind of taking a page out of Sony's book, but regardless, this looks to be really good. So let's discuss it. It's time to take a deep dive into Square Enix's Reboots and Awakens plan that will cover the next 3 years. Here's hoping. Now, to make sure I don't bore you to death with the financial reports, corporate talk, and the like, I'm going to cover the main topics that I think we as gamers really care about the most, showing you what was provided to the public, and then at the very end, I'm going to give you my overall quick opinion on everything. So, of course, as always, timestamps will be down below. Let's start with the biggest one, and that is Square's plan to go full multi-platform. Now, during this report, Square likes to break down its games into 2 categories, HD and SD. Starting with SD games, these focus on games released on iOS and Android. Well, it looks like part of their new plan now is to also release these on PC as well, which states the possibility of PC launches. This actually makes a lot of sense, since they've most likely seen some positive numbers on a game like Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, though it was not enough to balance out from the decline in Dragon Quest Champions. For those of you who don't know, Ever Crisis is a free-to-play game going through the full history of Final Fantasy VII, from the original game to Crisis Core and even the history of Sephiroth and the characters during that time. Of course, being free-to-play means that there's going to be things like microtransactions in the form of a gacha system.
Are you okay?
I'm fine, I just threw up in my mouth a little bit.
Now, from the reviews that I've seen, it seems to be a pretty player-friendly gacha system. As friendly as a gacha system can actually get. So you take the players on mobile and you combine that with the PC player base on Steam, and that means more money in your pocket. And while the Steam reviews are mixed at this current point in time, what did you expect? It's a gacha game. If even a few players play on PC and spend money, it's still going to be a positive since iOS and Android will obviously have the most players. The other category they have is HD games. These are your more traditional AAA games like the Final Fantasy VII Remake project, Final Fantasy XVI, FF Pixel Remaster, and Dragon Quest. Now this can be really big for them if they actually do this the right way. What do I mean by this? Like I said above, they're going to be going full multi-platform. They even say going to PlayStation, Nintendo, Xbox, and PC. That is assuming, though, that they actually release these games all at the same time on all the platforms. Square over the years has a tendency to release their games on one platform, then another, and then another. Take something like Octopath Traveler, for example. First, it was released on Nintendo Switch in the summer of 2018, then PC on June 2019, then Stadia back in spring of 2020. We all know what happened to that system. And finally, it was on Xbox in March of 2021. Then, Octopath Traveler 2 released, and it released on the Switch, PC, PS4, and PS5 all at once on February 2023. Xbox is supposed to be getting it sometime this year.
What?
Like I said, it can be weird sometimes. Then you have much of the timed exclusives like the Remake project and Final Fantasy XVI, which, look, as much as players don't like exclusives, the games still sell well, at least with the PlayStation platform for right now. We have reported many times that both Square and Sony have a 30-year strong relationship, and it's worked out for the most part. I know people online are going to say like, oh, it only sold X amount of millions of copies and everything, but let's be perfectly honest, you don't run the business, they do, and they're going to do what they feel is best. Even though, yes, this will go multi-platform and everything, I have some opinions that I'll share at the end of that. Not to mention, 16 and Remake are already hitting the PC. Remake's been out, obviously, and 16 should be releasing soon with a demo, and they seem to be putting a lot of work into all the features that you'd expect from a good PC port. Now, you can't say that about other PC ports, can you? In fact, developers have stated multiple times from Square that they actually prefer to work on one platform at a time. This would make sense. Work on your PlayStation 5, then you go work on the PC. However, that does mean that sales are going to be a lot slower than if everything was simply released at once. So it's got to balance out somewhere, right? In fact, speaking of PC ports, Rebirth should be hitting PC soon since it's only exclusive for about 3 months, at least based on all the trailer text that we saw at the end of them. Now, if you take games like 16 and the Remake project, and these games can actually run on something like the Switch 2/Switch Pro, that is definitely going to boost their numbers tremendously. The Switch has crazy numbers, there's no denying it, and if the next console from Nintendo does not flop like the Wii U, then Square's going to see a lot of those number sales go up because a lot of people who have a Switch or a Switch Pro are then going to buy their games to get on their system. The only one I'm personally curious about, though, is Microsoft and Xbox. Look, say what you want, but over the years, Square games don't sell that well on Xbox. Even something like Final Fantasy 15, which sold on PS4, Xbox, and PC, Xbox was the lowest sales on all three of the platforms. Plus, the buzz around 15, with the development hell phase and it originally being Versus 13, it was going to have some hype around it regardless, no matter what. I mean, heck, Final Fantasy 14 finally released on Xbox this year. It seems Microsoft finally let up on all the server stuff being used. But we haven't heard anything about the player numbers or new subs or anything from Final Fantasy 14 on the Xbox. I see some comments every now and then about Xbox players being excited that they finally get to play on Xbox, but other than that, I haven't really seen anything. I'm going to assume that it's all gone well. I mean, the release didn't break anything, but it doesn't really seem to have really moved the needle. So if the games do sell well on Xbox, then great, that's more players. But it still remains to be seen if Microsoft's going to go full third-party publisher, especially after all the news that has happened this particular month in 2024. Time will tell, obviously. Last thing I'll mention, obviously, in this little summary of notes is that it says the possibility of PC launches before the SD games. Here's hoping this is not super selective. Also remember, this is their plan. This is for investors, not the players. They know the investors are the ones going to be paying attention the most. Time will tell, but with the 6% increase that we saw after some of the bad news from a few weeks ago, I got some hope that the new CEO for the company is actually going to pull through on some of this stuff. Will all of it pull through? Most likely not. It never does, but we'll have to wait and see. Okay, let's move away from the multi-platform news and move on to sales. You know, I will say this, it's always funny talking about sales and everything because everyone seems to care online and everything, and yet certain numbers will say certain things, or the majority of casual gamers, because let's be honest, we're the minority in terms of those who watch videos and report on all this stuff, seem to go in the opposite direction or go against what we think is going to happen or what will or what should happen. Now, we know from past reporting that Final Fantasy 16 sold 3 million copies in its first week or so. Rebirth, we have not received any numbers up to this point, and Remake seemed to have sold pretty well, which is not really a shocker since it sold in the early parts of 2020. Also, the final thing that we found out before today was that Final Fantasy 16 reached a ton of new players and young players on top of that. So, has anything been updated? Well, not really, actually. We did learn that net sales are up 1% thanks to these games. You have to remember, these games were never going to cover Square's ass and get them out of the red due to all the NFT crap that they pulled over the last couple of years, which, funny enough, I always see people forgetting to mention and everything. Like they're trying to forget something. While net sales are up, YOY, aka year-over-year profits, are down, which again is not really surprising due to the last couple of years with NFTs and COVID just being over. Basic logic can tell you that profits will go down after something like COVID happens, and it's going to take some time for that stuff to recover and go back up. Investors and businesses hate this, but let's just be honest, it's the truth. The only way you can technically keep things increasing at that similar rate is you just have to raise prices and trick people into still buying stuff. I mean, that's why we only see things like Amazon and everything still having those crazy high numbers. An interesting note that I did find, though, was that the units sold in certain regions is actually up for the most part, both physical and digital. This little table shows you the year before and this previous year, and it even breaks it down by regions, going by Japan, North America and Europe, Asia and other countries, and just total in general. So that's good to see, I guess. Final note here is that their operating income is down due to the higher dev costs and advertising costs. Again, this isn't really too shocking. And also, another reason that past deals with Sony have also happened is Sony does cover a lot of these things when it comes to marketing. So I'm sure that number could have been actually much higher. Overall, though, there's nothing really new to report when it comes to individual numbers. Going through all the pages that I personally could, they simply bundled everything together. Not even Final Fantasy 16 sales are updated. Nothing on Final Fantasy 14 sub numbers or DLC sales. It really makes me wonder, though, if the Final Fantasy 16 sales post that we saw after a week was simply published by Yoshi P and his team and not Square themselves. I know it was also released by the official Square Twitter account, but I mean, they could have just simply been communicating and someone simply posted it. Final thing of note for this particular section is that net profits are down partly due to cancellation of some, quote, key pieces of content. This actually tracks with the rest of the industry not having all of that quote-unquote free money during the pandemic time, or simply trying to jump into the live service bandwagon and then having to cancel these games and projects, which is obviously going to cut into profits. We've seen this with Sony, we've seen this with Xbox, we've seen it all over the place, except for maybe Nintendo, but Nintendo always does their own thing, so it is what it is. That being said though, one interesting note is that the publisher wants to invest in new IPs and bring back old IPs. This, however, does seem to go against what was said like 2 weeks ago when they want to be focusing on what works and then deciding on what can be bumped up to AAA. If you guys remember that, we covered that a couple of weeks ago. But hey, if they're actually serious about new IPs and some old IPs returning and everything, then I'm actually all for it. All I gotta say is just keep The World Ends With You going. That's all I personally ask for. I love that series, and you should go play it too if you haven't already. Overall, this report lines up with a lot of the industry. I expected things to be low/negative simply due to the economy, their past few years' mistakes, and so on. Many over the years have also pointed to Capcom and how they've basically been the opposite of Square and wishing that Square would follow in their footsteps. I will remind people though that even though they're stating that they're going to go full multi-platform and they go with something very similar to Capcom, that's going to mean a lot of remakes actually. If you look at Capcom from even something like 2019 to now, it's been Resident Evil, Street Fighter, and Monster Hunter as the big games. Great games, absolutely love them, but I always see people complaining online about remasters and remakes. And yes, I know the people online, whether you're complaining or hyping things up, we're the minority. But still, they're remasters and remakes, so which is it? Or is it because Capcom has gone full multi-platform, except for certain games that obviously the Switch can't handle or anything? If Square actually follows through this entire plan by going full multi-platform, which again I'm going to say, you need to make sure your PC ports day one are ready to go, doing things like investing in new IPs every now and then obviously old IPs, then I can actually see this working out very well with them. Time will tell, obviously. If the products are of good quality, then I will 100% support them by buying these games. Oh, also, I should note, don't expect these to go on any subscription services. After all of the Game Pass news this last week, I don't see Square touching that, or PlayStation Plus, or anything like that that can hurt their sales. Unless it's like maybe, say, years and years down the road or something like that. And because I know people are going to bring it up in the comments, even though Final Fantasy VII Rebirth numbers were not provided, I still think the game did well based on the players that we simply saw playing the game and all the positive feedback that we got from it. And just keep in mind that it's an evergreen game. As we stated in our Square lost how much money video, Rebirth not outselling Remake is not really a shocker. But the PC port not releasing yet, it being a sequel, people waiting for the full trilogy to release, Square being really stupid with not promoting their twin pack, and many other reasons that we covered in that video, it really isn't that big of a shocker. Square has always had stupid high expectations when it comes to their games, so they were never going to say anything. Oh, last thing I didn't really mention because I didn't really talk about it or anything in this particular earnings, but just wanted to get my opinion on it, is current contracts and things that are going on right now. With this plan to go full multi-platform, people are saying like, oh, that means just everything is just simply done and we're just going to start getting everything on every platform. That really all depends on whatever the contracts say in the details and everything. I still expect something like Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 to go to PlayStation first, then go to PC, and if it can handle it, then also go to Switch 2 at that time, or Switch Pro, whatever they're going to call it. That game won't release until 2027, and we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen. Now, if you're wondering why I didn't mention Xbox/Microsoft, it's because if Microsoft decides to actually change gears and go full third-party platform, then it's obviously not going to release there, especially if they don't release anything new. I know they've talked about releasing a new quote-unquote Xbox, but there's even rumors about it being more of a handheld, similar to what you see for like the Steam Deck or something like that. So we'll have to wait and see. If it's already going to be on PC, and this new handheld from Xbox is going to be like a Steam Deck or a ROX or anything like that, then yeah, it will release on there because it's just releasing on PC already. So we'll have to wait and see though. If there is actually a full brand new Xbox system though, and the game does release on there, great. The Xbox players, I have to say this, you will have to buy it. There's no waiting until Game Pass. You keep saying that you want these games. Now is going to be your chance. Prove them wrong. Improve those numbers enough, and Square will keep putting these games on your platform. This new CEO is not the old CEO who says one thing and does another thing. This guy really wants to make things work, it seems. So help him out. Extend a hand. A lot of these games are critical successes, so now's your chance. With all that being said, that's my final opinion on everything that we just talked about here. But now I want to turn the question to you. Do you like these changes that Square has lining up? Again, this was directed at investors, obviously, so not everything is set in stone. But I still want to know your thoughts down below in the comments, and I'll reply to as many as I possibly can. If you happen to enjoy this type of video, then consider checking out our other videos in the top right corner and in the pinned comment down below. We have tons of news videos, guides, and everything, so if you like that kind of stuff, then hit the like button. And if you really want to keep helping us, then consider hitting that subscribe button, as we're really close to hitting our year-end goal of 5,000 subs. With all that being said though, I've been Talon with Direct Gaming. Thank you so much for joining me in the video, and I can't wait to see you all in the next one, and I really hope you enjoyed. Until next time, everyone, Johnny.